The three black limousines stopped exactly in front of Jerome's small hot dog cart. Drivers in suits stepped out simultaneously. They opened the rear doors with military precision. And then he appeared, an imposing Arab man, in a tailored suit, wearing a watch worth more than Jerome's entire cart. "Are you Jerome Williams?" the man asked, his voice carrying a refined accent. Jerome froze, the spatula still in his hand. At 34, he knew trouble when he saw it. And three limousines on Riverside Avenue, right in front of his humble business, could only mean one thing: big trouble. "Yes, sir." "That's me," Jerome replied, his voice firm despite his racing heart. The man took a step forward. His eyes scanned the worn cart, the plastic chairs, the patched umbrella. Then they landed on something specific: the small wooden bench next to the cart, where a gray-haired woman was sitting, eating a hot dog. "Is it true that you feed this woman every day?" the Arab man asked. Jerome looked at Helen, the homeless woman who had become part of his daily routine. She had stopped chewing, her eyes wide with fear. "Yes, sir. Every day for almost 2 years." What Jerome didn't know was that this answer would change his life in ways he could never have imagined. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back 28 months, to when it all started with a simple question on a cold winter morning. 28 months earlier, January 2022. Jerome was cleaning his cart when he first saw the woman. She was standing a few feet away, looking at the cart with that expression he knew all too well: hunger. She must have been in her mid-50s, but life on the streets made her look older. Disheveled hair, layered dirty clothes, a torn bag hanging from her shoulder. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Sir, do you have any leftovers?" "Anything will do." Jerome stopped what he was doing. Something about that request struck a chord. Maybe it was because he himself knew hunger. At 19, he had lost his parents in a car accident. He was left alone, without family, without money. He slept in shelters. He went hungry. He worked 3 jobs until he could save enough money to buy that used cart. He knew exactly what it was like to have an empty stomach and trampled dignity. "Not leftovers, ma'am," Jerome said, and saw the disappointment in her eyes. "But I can make you a fresh one. You can sit there." Helen's eyes welled up with tears. I don't have any money." "I didn't ask for money. I asked you to sit down." That day, Jerome prepared the best hot dog he could make. Warm bun, well-seasoned sausage, all the toppings. When he handed it to her, Helen held the plate with both trembling hands. "What's your name?" Jerome asked. "Helen. Helen Carter." "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Helen. I'm Jerome. And from now on, you have a place to have lunch every day." Helen started crying right there, on the wooden bench. The next day, she returned. And the next. And the next. Every afternoon, around 2 p.m., Helen would appear. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they were silent. But Jerome always prepared food for her, without exception. The other street vendors thought Jerome was crazy. "You're losing money, brother," they said. But Jerome didn't care. What none of them knew was that Helen was keeping a secret. A secret about her past that was about to resurface in a devastating way. And Jerome, unknowingly, was being watched. Someone had noticed his kindness. Someone very powerful was paying attention to every gesture, every plate of food delivered with dignity. If you are enjoying this story of kindness and a major turning point, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will completely surprise you. 6 months after that first meeting, Jerome and Helen's routine was established. Every day, exactly at 2 p.m., she would appear. Jerome already had the plate ready. But something started to change. One July afternoon, Jerome noticed purple bruises on Helen's arm. She tried to hide them by pulling down her sleeve, but he had already seen. "Mrs. Helen, what happened?" Helen looked away. "Nothing, Jerome. I just stumbled." Stumbling doesn't leave a handprint mark on your arm. The silence hung heavy. Finally, Helen sighed deeply. "There are some guys, they've been taking things from the homeless people. Food, blankets, money. If we resist, they..." She didn't finish the sentence. Anger boiled in Jerome's chest. "Did you try to ask for help? The police?" Helen gave a bitter laugh. "Jerome dear, The police don't care about people like me. To them, we are invisible. That night, Jerome couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Helen, about all the other invisible people on the street. He decided to do something. The next day, Jerome looked for Marcus, a friend who worked at an NGO for the homeless. "I need your help," he said. "I want to start distributing real food. Not just for Helen. For everyone." Marcus looked at him, surprised. "Brother, you can barely pay your own bills." "I know. But I can't just stand by." For the following months, Jerome began to do something extraordinary. He woke up at 4 a.m., prepared sandwiches in the small apartment he shared with 2 roommates, and distributed them before opening his cart. He spent the little he had. He slept less. He worked harder. Helen noticed. "Jerome, you don't have to do this. You already do too much." "Mrs. Helen, when I was 19 and slept on the street for the first time, a man gave me a sandwich. He didn't know me. He didn't know my name. But he looked at me like I was a person. I never forgot that." Helen held his hand, her eyes moist. "You're special, you know?" What Jerome didn't know was that his actions were being documented. Someone was taking photos. Filming discreetly. Following every move. One day, a well-dressed man showed up at the cart. Arabic accent, elegant posture. "A hot dog, please." "Sure, sir. Do you want it with everything?" The man nodded, but his eyes were not on the food. They were observing Helen sitting on the bench, and Jerome serving her with the same care he gave paying customers. "Do you know this lady?" the man asked casually. "Yes, I do. Mrs. Helen comes here every day." "And do you charge her?" Jerome frowned. "No, sir. She's my guest." The man was silent for a moment. Then he took the hot dog, paid with a $50 bill, and said, "Keep the change. You do beautiful work here." Before Jerome could reply, the man was gone. 3 weeks later, Helen didn't show up at the usual time. Jerome waited. 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m. Nothing. He closed the cart early and went looking for her in the places where the homeless usually stayed. He found her under a bridge, shaking, her face bruised. "Mrs. Helen. What did they do to you?" Helen tried to smile through the pain. "Those guys came back. They took everything I had." Jerome felt his blood boil. "You're coming with me. Now." "Jerome, I can't." "I'm not asking, Mrs. Helen. I'm telling you." He took her to his small apartment. His roommate, Sarah, helped clean Helen's wounds. "She needs a safe place," Sarah said. "I know. But I don't have the means to." That's when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello." A voice with an Arabic accent answered. "Jerome Williams? My name is Farid Al-Rashid. We need to talk. About Helen Carter." Jerome froze. How did this man know Helen? How did he get his number? "Who are you? What do you want with her?" "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., at your cart. I'll show up with some friends. Don't worry. I've come to bring answers." The coal dropped. Jerome looked at Helen, who had fallen asleep on the sofa, finally safe. Something big was about to happen. He could feel it. What he didn't imagine was that Helen Carter was not who he thought she was. And the man who called was about to turn everyone's world upside down. The next day, exactly at 2 p.m., the 3 black limousines stopped in front of Jerome's cart. Passers-by stopped to watch. Drivers in suits opened the doors. And then Farid Al-Rashid stepped out, followed by 2 lawyers and an older man carrying a leather briefcase. "Jerome Williams," Farid extended his hand. "Thank you for receiving me." Jerome shook his hand, confused. "Sir, with all due respect, what is going on? How do you know Mrs. Helen?" Farid looked around. "Is she here?" "No. After what happened yesterday, I thought it best for her to stay in my apartment resting." Farid's face turned serious. "What happened yesterday?" Jerome recounted the injuries, the attack, how he found Helen bruised under the bridge. With every word, Farid's expression hardened, his jaw clenched. "This ends today," Farid said, turning to one of the lawyers. "I want private security for her. 24 hours. Effective immediately. Then he looked at the other assistant. And I want those criminals found. Use the contacts we have in the police force. I want justice. Sir, wait, Jerome interrupted. I don't understand anything. Who are you? Why do you care so much about Mrs. Helen? Farid took a deep breath. The people around them had formed a small circle, curious. Because Helen Carter saved my life 15 years ago. Silence fell like a bomb. In 2009, I was just a 22-year-old engineering student. I came to the United States on a scholarship, full of dreams, but the money was barely enough for food. I worked 3 jobs, studied at night, slept 4 hours a day. Jerome listened, motionless. The other street vendors also approached. One December night, after 16 hours without eating anything, I collapsed in the street. It was terribly cold. People walked past me as if I were trash. No one stopped. No one cared. Farid's voice trembled. I was dying, Jerome. Literally dying of hunger and cold in one of the richest cities in the world. And then? Jerome asked softly. And then Helen appeared. She was returning from a volunteer shift at a community clinic. She saw me, stopped immediately, called for help. She took me to the clinic, paid out of her own pocket for food, medicine, blankets. She stayed by my side for 3 whole days until I fully recovered. Farid paused, wiping his eyes. When I left, I tried to thank her. She smiled, that gentle smile of hers, and gave me an envelope. Inside was $200. All the money she had saved in months. I cried. I said I couldn't accept it. She held my hands and said, Farid, one day you will be in a position to help someone. When that day comes, don't give this money back to me. Pass that kindness forward. Make someone feel like their life matters. The people around them were in absolute silence. Some were wiping away tears. I returned to the Middle East, finished my studies, started a technology company. The company grew. It became big. Very big. I became rich. Very rich. And for 15 years, I searched for Helen Carter. I spent millions. I hired the best investigators. I searched hospitals, records, databases. Nothing. Until 3 months ago, Farid pulled out his cell phone, showed a photo. One of my assistants was passing by this street. He sent me this image. The photo showed Jerome handing food to Helen, both smiling, talking like old friends. I didn't believe it. After all these years, the woman who saved me was just a few blocks from where I used to stay when I came to the city. But when I came to investigate personally, I discovered something that crushed me. The older man opened the briefcase and handed documents to Jerome. Helen lost everything, Jerome. Her husband, Richard, died of cancer 8 years ago. She spent all her savings caring for him, more than $180,000 in treatments. She sold the house. She sold everything. And when he died, she was left with huge hospital debts. Jerome held the documents with trembling hands. She tried to continue working as a volunteer nurse, but the depression and stress were too much. She lost her job. She lost her rented apartment. And little by little, the woman who dedicated her entire life to saving others, ended up on the streets. Invisible. Forgotten. Ignored. Farid looked directly into Jerome's eyes. The woman who saved me when I was a nobody was sleeping under bridges. And no one cared. No one, except you. I saw you, Jerome. For weeks, I watched. I saw you wake up at 4 a.m. to make sandwiches. I saw you spend your own money you barely have, to feed strangers. I saw you treat Helen not like a beggar, but like a queen. With dignity. With respect. With love. Jerome felt tears burn his eyes. You did exactly what Helen asked me to do 15 years ago. You passed the kindness forward. You made her feel like her life matters. And now? Farid nodded to the lawyers. It's my turn. One of the lawyers handed over documents. I bought an apartment for Helen. 3 bedrooms, fully furnished, in a safe neighborhood. It's paid off. In her name. Forever. The other lawyer continued, we also established a trust fund that guarantees her $3,500 a month for the rest of her life. She will never be in need again. Jerome covered his mouth, tears falling freely. And for you, Jerome Williams. Farid handed him a thick envelope. You who work 16 hours a day at this cart. You who give the little you have without asking for anything in return. Jerome opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a check. His eyes widened at the amount. $75,000 for you to open your own restaurant. You choose the location. And what's more, my foundation will finance a program that you will personally manage. Food distribution for the homeless in 5 cities. Annual budget, $300,000. You will employ people. You will save lives. You will make a difference. Jerome fell to his knees right there, on the dirty sidewalk. He was sobbing. Why? He managed to ask through tears. Why me? I just gave food. No, Farid knelt down too, holding Jerome's shoulders. You gave dignity. You gave hope. You gave humanity. In a world that teaches people to step over others, you stopped. You saw. You cared. At that moment, a familiar voice echoed. Jerome. Helen was around the corner. Sarah had brought her. When her eyes met Farid's, she stopped. She put her hands to her face, trembling. Farid, she whispered in disbelief. The boy, the scholarship student? It's me, Helen. I came back. I came to get you. I came to take you home. Helen ran like she hadn't run in years, and threw herself into Farid's arms. They both cried, clinging to each other, while the people around them applauded, cheered, and wiped away tears. Jerome watched it all, still on his knees, holding the check that would change his life forever. 6 months later, Jerome stood in front of a building that had once been an impossible dream. Bright neon letters read, House of Hope Community Restaurant. Helen was by his side, wearing an elegant navy blue suit, her gray hair styled in a modern cut, her face radiant and healthy. There were no longer any signs of the fragile woman who slept under bridges, shivering from cold and hunger. She smiled with eyes full of life and purpose. Ready for the big day? She asked, squeezing his hand affectionately. Jerome took a deep breath, looking at the dozens of people gathering in front of the restaurant. I've never been so ready in my life, Mrs. Helen. Farid arrived minutes later, accompanied by his wife Layla and their 2 young children. My friend, he hugged Jerome tightly, tears in his eyes. You have built something extraordinary here. Something that will change this city forever. The restaurant was more than just a business. It was a symbol. Half of it functioned as a normal restaurant, serving quality food at affordable prices. The other half served free meals for the homeless, refugees, and struggling families, 3 times a day, 7 days a week. Jerome had hired 15 employees, and they all had something in common. They were former homeless individuals whom he had personally helped get off the streets in recent months. Marcus, his friend from the NGO, was there too. Man, I told you were crazy. But you proved me wrong. You're not crazy. You're a visionary. During the inauguration ceremony, Helen went up to the small makeshift stage. Her voice was firm, clear, full of emotion. 2 years ago, I was invisible. People crossed the street to avoid walking near me. They held their purses tighter when they saw me. They averted their eyes, as if I were a ghost. I had lost everything, my husband, my home, my career, my dignity. I thought I had lost my worth as a human being. She paused, wiping away tears. I wanted to die. Honestly, there were nights when I prayed not to wake up the next day. The pain of being invisible is worse than hunger. It's worse than cold. It's feeling like you don't matter anymore. That your life has no meaning. The silence was absolute. Everyone listened, mesmerized. But one man saw me. Jerome didn't see a dirty beggar. He saw a person. A woman with a history, with pain, with lost dreams. And he treated me like a human being. He didn't know I had been a nurse. He didn't know I once saved the life of a foreign student. He knew nothing about me. But he gave me something I thought I had lost forever. Helen looked directly at Jerome. He gave me dignity. He gave me hope. He made me feel that my life still mattered. People applauded, many crying openly. And now, Helen continued, her voice stronger, I am here. I have a beautiful home. I have security. I have returned to volunteer work at the clinic where I worked for 20 years. My life has been completely restored. And everything, absolutely everything, started with a simple plate of food given with love. Jerome took the microphone, his voice trembling with emotion. I learned something precious in these last few years. Kindness is not weakness. Compassion is not naivety. Generosity is not stupidity. When you reach out to someone who is down, you are not just lifting that person. You are lifting all of humanity. He looked at Farid, who was holding his children. A foreign student was saved by a nurse. That student became a businessman and saved the nurse 15 years later. The nurse inspired me to continue helping. And now together, we will save hundreds, thousands. Because kindness doesn't end. It multiplies. It always multiplies. 3 months after the inauguration, Jerome's program was already operating in 5 different cities. More than 1,200 meals were served daily. 32 former homeless individuals now had stable jobs, decent wages, and apartments. Some returned to school. Others reconnected with lost families. Helen became a full-time volunteer coordinator, visiting shelters, talking to people on the streets, sharing her story in schools and churches. If I manage to get out from under that freezing bridge and regain a meaningful life, she would say with conviction, you can too. Don't give up. Someone will see you. Someone will care. Farid didn't just expand the funding, he created an international foundation. He opened similar centers in 8 countries. Each one was named after ordinary people who had made a difference. Vendors, teachers, bus drivers, people who chose to see the invisible when everyone else turned away. One rainy autumn afternoon, Jerome was serving food when he saw a young man sitting alone outside, in the rain. Thin, dirty, shaking, completely lost. His empty eyes seemed to hold no more hope. Exactly as Helen had been 2 years ago. Jerome grabbed an umbrella, prepared a generous plate, and walked over to him. Hi. My name is Jerome. What's yours? The young man slowly looked up, surprised that someone was talking to him. Daniel, he replied in a hoarse voice. Daniel, are you hungry? The young man nodded, and tears began to stream down his dirty face, mixing with the rain. Then come with me, brother. Here, you will always have a seat at the table. You will always have warm food. You will always have a blanket. And you will always have someone who cares. You are not invisible. You matter. Daniel held the plate with both trembling hands, exactly as Helen had done 2 years before. And Jerome knew deep in his heart, the cycle was continuing. Kindness multiplied like ripples on an endless lake. That late afternoon, as the sun broke through the clouds after the rain, Jerome stood at the restaurant door watching. His space was full of life, people eating, talking, laughing, reconnecting with their humanity. Former homeless people, now uniformed and dignified, serving others who were still struggling on the streets. Helen laughing with a group of new volunteers. Farid in the kitchen, wearing an apron, tasting dishes and talking to the cooks, proving that his wealth had not distanced him from people. And Jerome finally understood the deepest, most transformative truth. We don't need much to change the world. We don't need to be rich. We don't need to be powerful. We just need to see the people that others ignore. We just need to stop. We just need to care enough to act. The best response to the cruelty of the world is not to become cruel too. It is to choose to be kind even when it hurts. It is to choose to see even when it's easier to ignore. It is to choose to act even when no one is watching. And what about you, watching now? Have you stopped to see who is invisible around you? Have you reached out to someone everyone ignores? Have you offered dignity to those the world has forgotten? Leave your answer in the comments. Tell your story. Inspire others. And if this story touched your heart, if it made you feel something real, subscribe to the channel now. Soon, I will bring more true stories of ordinary people who chose to make an extraordinary difference. Because the world doesn't need superheroes. The world needs more Jeromes. More Helens. More Farids. More people willing to see, to care, to act. The world needs you. Your kindness. Your compassion. Your sight that sees beyond appearances. Because in the end, we are all the same. We all need food. We all need shelter. But more than anything, We all need to know that our lives matter. That someone cares. That we are not alone. Be that someone today.